I was treated as invisible by my own family, but today, with strength and courage, I rebuilt my life from scratch. I never imagined that Sunday morning would be the day everything would change for me. I'd thought about leaving home before. I'd cried in my room. I'd written unburdening texts that I never posted, but that day was different. I woke up exhausted. It felt like my body couldn't take it anymore. It was as if I were trapped in a life that was never mine, in a role someone had forced down my throat. When I got out of bed, I looked in the mirror and saw a broken man, tired of always being available to everyone but himself. That's when I knew for the first time I needed to get out of there. It wasn't just a desire, it was a matter of survival. The trigger was breakfast, can you believe it? Such a simple thing, yet it turned into yet another pathetic scene in my life. My mother always made my brother Leonardo's coffee just the way he liked it. I could be sick, tired, working hard, and no one would even notice. But that day, I sat at the table and listened to my father tell me I needed to be more like Leo, that he was the family's example. An example of what? Of laziness? Of living at the expense of others? I felt my stomach churn. It was always the same old story, always the same disgusting comparison that made me feel like garbage. But for the first time, I didn't swallow hard. I got up from the table without finishing my meal, went to my room, and started throwing my clothes into an old backpack. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking. I knew there would be a fight, that they would call me ungrateful, irresponsible, but at that moment, I didn't give a damn. I just wanted to leave. I needed to breathe. My head was a mess, one side saying, "Stay, don't make things complicated," the other screaming, "Get out of here before you go crazy." I heard them banging on the door, shouting my name, asking what I was doing. I ignored them. For the first time, I put myself first. When I left the room with my backpack on my back, my father stood in front of me, telling me I wasn't leaving, that as long as I lived there, I had to obey. I took a deep breath, looked him straight in the eye and said, "I'd rather be poor and free than continue living like trash in my own house." His face instantly turned red. My mother started crying. My brother laughed mockingly. I didn't say anything else. Went to the door, opened it, and left. My legs were shaking. So badly I thought I might faint on the street. But at the same time, I felt a strange relief, as if I'd just escaped from prison. I wandered aimlessly for almost an hour. I remember sitting in a random square and crying like a child. It was a mix of fear, anger, and insecurity, but also a sense of relief. I knew it would be difficult, that I had no money left, that I would struggle to make ends meet. But I also knew that any hardship was better than living in those four walls, feeling like an intruder in my own home. My mind kept replaying scenes from my childhood, the moments I was ignored, the times I saw Leo being defended even though he was wrong, and I was always blamed for everything. I remember that on that bench, I promised myself that I would never again accept being a second-class son. I deserved better, even if no one in my family saw it. I texted my friend Diego and told him briefly what had happened, and he told me to go to his house. I didn't think twice. Took the subway and arrived there feeling a little embarrassed and lost, but Diego welcomed me warmly without judgment. I slept on his couch that night, my head still a whirlwind, but for the first time in years, I was able to sleep without feeling that anguish lodged in my chest. The next day I woke up early and went to work. I remember looking at my reflection in the subway car with giant bags under my eyes. It looked like I'd cried a lot, but there I was, standing, going after mine. I knew I couldn't stop, that the world wasn't going to hand me anything on a silver platter. I went to work, worked hard all day, and at the end of the day, I looked for cheap studio apartments online. I couldn't stay at Diego's house forever. I wanted my own place, even if it was a cubicle. Life was starting over, and I needed to face it head on. The first week was a mix of fear and freedom. Every message my mom sent me trying to manipulate me, I ignored. Every indirect message my dad sent in the family group, I read but didn't respond. They were trying to make me feel guilty, but I was determined not to fall for it anymore. Leo didn't even bother to ask where I was. And then I realized maybe I was never a son to them. I was just someone to carry their burden. And in that moment, I chose to be someone for myself. Getting my first rental was a struggle in itself. I didn't have much saved because almost everything I earned went into the house, helping out on a budget that wasn't even my obligation. But I started cutting back on all unnecessary expenses, sold some things I no longer used, and scrambled to find a very simple studio apartment in a more remote neighborhood. When I got the key, I sat on the empty floor of that tiny room and cried again. But it was a different kind of cry, a cry of relief, of pride, you know. It was my space. For the first time, I wasn't walking on eggshells inside the house. The first few days there, I slept on a mattress on the floor with no fridge, no stove, just some clothes and my old cell phone. Was it uncomfortable? Yes, but it was my freedom. I worked all day, came home tired, ate ramen noodles, but I felt light. No one belittled me, no nasty comparisons, no awkwardness at breakfast. Little by little, I started buying things, getting a used stove, a minibar, even a simple television. Each achievement was huge to me. No one congratulated me, no applause, but I looked around and knew it was all mine, the result of my own hard work. There were days when I almost gave up, I won't lie. Sometimes I'd wake up in the cold without even a proper blanket and think, did I mess up? Sometimes the loneliness would hit hard, especially on Sundays when I was always used to hearing the noise of a full house, even if it was toxic. But then I'd remember the humiliations, the comparisons, the times when I was treated like a family servant, and I'd take a deep breath and move on. It was painful, but it was a kind of pain that came with freedom, so it was worth it. I also changed my routine. I started working out at a gym near the studio apartment. It wasn't a top-notch gym, but it helped clear my head. I stopped wasting time responding to family messages, focused on improving my work, requested courses the company offered, and wanted to grow professionally. I realized I'd always given my best to others, and now I needed to give my best to myself. Without realizing it, I started enjoying my own company more. I began to respect who I was, and that was a completely new feeling for me. Little by little, I began to make new friends, people who treated me well without expecting anything in return. It was strange at first because I came from an environment where everything was pressure and emotional blackmail, but I gradually understood that there is life outside that toxic bubble. One of the most symbolic moments was when I declined an invitation to come home for a family lunch. My mother texted me to say they missed me, but I knew it was just an act. I politely replied that I was fine, that I didn't need to go, and then I turned off my phone without a guilty conscience. There was also the teasing phase, right? My brother was always posting on social media, mocking ungrateful people who abandon their families. I had to learn to ignore it, to not let it affect me. It took time, but I finally realized that the problem wasn't me. They were just bothered because I stopped being the doormat. And the further I distanced myself, the more I saw how toxic they were. It was like taking a blindfold off. I thought I needed their approval, but in reality, they needed my effort to stay in that comfort zone. The biggest shock for me was realizing how much I'd matured in such a short time. Before, I was always putting out fires for others, always on call, always carrying the guilt. After I left, I began to see that my life was my responsibility, yes, but also my freedom. It wasn't my obligation to support a lazy man. It wasn't my duty to please someone who never valued me. I learned to say no, to set boundaries. And man, what a wonderful feeling it is to be able to say no without fear, without guilt, without drama. Of course, there are still difficult days. I still feel angry when I remember certain things. It still hurts to think that I didn't have the family I deserved. But you know what? I also feel proud. proud of not having become bitter, proud of having escaped that cycle, proud of having built my own path. Every day I wake up in my studio apartment, every bill paid with my hard-earned money is proof that I'm much more than they led me to believe. I no longer expect recognition from my family. I've already understood that some people only know how to suck and will never admit their mistakes. But today, I also no longer harbor the illusion of doing everything to be accepted. I don't need to be accepted by anyone who treated me like trash. I accept myself, I respect myself, and that's more than I ever had before. Freedom has a price, yes, but it's a price worth every penny, every tear, every effort. And honestly, I'd pay it all again without a second thought. Over time, my life took a different path. I got a promotion at work after so much dedication. My salary improved. I was able to trade in my old mattress for a decent bed and the broken stove for a new one. Today, I cook my own meals, watch my own movies, and go out whenever I want. Simple things, I know, but I never had the right to. Live without pressure. Every achievement, no matter how small, is a slap in the face to those people who swore I'd fail. And I don't rub it in their faces, I just live. And living well is the greatest answer. Sometimes I stop to think about everything I endured in silence. How many times I was made a fool of just because I was the younger brother. How many times I was blamed for things I wasn't even at fault for, just because it was easier to blame. Those memories still hurt me, I won't lie. But today, I can look back and see that I was never weak. On the contrary, I was incredibly strong for enduring it all alone. And now I'm even stronger for having the courage to step out and change everything, even without support. There's nothing more satisfying than looking in the mirror and seeing someone I respect. Before, I felt empty, a zombie playing the role of a useful son. Today, I own my life, my schedule, my choices. If I want to sleep all day, I do. If I want to work twice as hard, I do. There's no one controlling me, belittling me, using me anymore. And this feeling of freedom is so powerful that only those who have experienced it will truly understand. The craziest thing is that many outsiders don't know anything. There are relatives who think I'm rebellious, ungrateful, that I left my family out of spite. But I know my story. I know everything I endured. And I learned that I don't owe anyone an explanation. I was the one who lived. I was the one who cried alone. I was the one who was treated like trash. And it's for myself that I get up every day, no longer to please anyone. And that's the greatest relief I've ever felt in my life. Today, I no longer feel like the rejected son. I feel like the guy who broke free. And I wrote all this here because I know there are many people going through what I did, thinking they have to accept humiliation because it's family. No, they don't. A family that destroys your self-esteem isn't family, it's prison. And sometimes, the only way out is to break everything, get out however you can, and build a new life, even from scratch. That's what I did, and I've never felt so at peace. I won't lie, it's not easy, far from it, but it is possible. And every day you fight for yourself is a day you stop feeling useless. If I can help one person with my story, it's already been worth it. Because I know what it's like to live dragging yourself along, thinking your life will never get better. But it does get better. With effort, with pain, with struggle, it gets better. And when it gets better, you never accept going back to that. And so I continue, building my life, respecting my time, without giving explanations to those who never respected me. Freedom didn't come for free, but it came with dignity. And today, I wouldn't trade my peace for anything in this world.